Record button. All right, welcome everyone to Map Time Davis. My name is Michelle Tobias. I am the Geospatial Data Specialist at UC Davis Data Lab. Data Lab puts on Map Time Davis as a part of the Spatial Sciences Research and Learning Cluster, but it's also facilitated by Map Time Davis Council, which is a group of people who get together at least once a month to figure out what we're doing with Map Time and make sure that this important resource on campus happens. While I'm talking about Map Time Davis Council, we have applications open for next year. So if you are interested in helping us put this workshop on, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and Map Time Davis Council has been contributing for the last year. I will put the link in the chat for that, along with a couple other important links. So I will paste that right now. One of the top link is a link. There's a lot going on in the news right now. And I realized today might be tough for a lot of people. So I put some links to UC Davis mental health resources in case that is of use to anyone for students and staff. Just want to put that out there because today is a lot of processing and there's a lot of other things going on in the news. So that's available to you should you need that or want that. The other link that's in there is the link to our Map Time Davis schedule. We have a couple more workshops coming up this quarter, including next week, I'm going to be teaching spatial SQL. So if you ever wanted to learn more about open source database options and writing SQL queries, next week is going to be your week. So join us. It should be fun. Should be a good intro. It's an established workshop and I enjoyed teaching this one. Also, there's the link to the Map Time Davis Council application in the chat. So if you are interested in joining us, there's also more information on that link at the top of the application form. So if you want some more information, check that out. You can always email me too, or any of the folks on Map Time Davis Council. We'd be happy to tell you more about what we do and why you can contribute. We're always looking for more help. So today's workshop is about mapping for communities, so engaging underserved communities through GIS and mapping. And I'm going to turn it over to Mina to introduce our guest speakers today, who I'm really excited to have. I'm ecstatic. This is going to be awesome.
Hi, everyone. We are happy that we are hosting Aora Planning. For this workshop, Aora Planning has long been involved and initiated in the projects that empower underserved communities using creative ways to empower people to and facilitate the ways that they engage with the governments and nonprofits. They have lots of projects in Sacramento that they use the GIS and GIS related softwares to facilitate the process of participation of people in making their communities and empowering underrepresented groups in planning practices. So I'm just heading to Angelina and Vosawale, who are here with us to talk about their projects, and they would also be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Hello, thank you, Mina. This is Angelina Rahimi, and today we are gonna talk about engaging underserved communities through GIS mapping and tools that we provide for the communities. Vosawale will answer your technical questions, and I will talk about the strategies. So the agenda for today is we are going to introduce ourselves and the company, and then talk about two strategies that we are using. If we have time, we will talk about another initiative that we are taking, which is not out there. But if not, we will talk about map-based surveys that we trained high school students, local high school students, to engage their own family members and overcome cultural and language barriers. And we will show you two examples of that. And the other strategy that we used is using create an interactive map for nonprofits to be able to help them with their applications for funding and also for advocating for their needs. Again, we will explain them more and we will show you examples. And we really would love to make this a conversation rather than a presentation. So I encourage you, please stop us, ask questions, and let's make it learning for both sides. We would love to hear from you. I know you have a great experience using GIS, and we would like to learn more of maybe methods and strategies that we can use for empowering our communities. So Aora Planning is a planning company. My background is in architecture and planning, and I started the company in 2020. But I am originally from Iran, and I continued my education in Canada after getting my degree in architecture from Iran, and then moved to the States in 2016 after working about more than 10 years in architecture and planning. I moved to the States and in 2016, and initially I was working for consultants and nonprofit organizations, but then I decided to start my own company. The main objective of our company is to be able to serve underserved communities. We will talk more about the goals of a mission of Aora Planning, but the area which is relevant to this conversation is that we decided to only serve projects that create opportunities for our underserved community members. So the main goal, one of the areas is clean transportation, but also community outreach and community education and other planning projects are part of Aora Planning's examples of projects. But for GIS and community outreach, we are using GIS as a tool to give voice to our communities. So, as I said, Vosawale will answer your questions about technical aspects of GIS, and I will talk about our strategies. Vosawale, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Vosawale, or Vosa for short. It's like Rosa, but with a V. I'm also a planner like Angelina. I recently graduated from a small university in South Carolina, and I'm actually originally from Fiji. I came across to the States on a Fulbright scholarship back in 2019, and after graduating, I've been working with Angelina and getting some planning experience. Fun fact is that I'm not really formally trained in GIS. It's something I've just sort of learned along the way, and mostly by attending these sort of workshops and those going to those Esri training courses online. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Vosawale. So if you go to the next slide, again, if you have more questions, we would be more than happy to answer them. We are showing some of the nonprofits and local organizations that we are working with, except Swift Current, which is in Canada, actually. The other organization that you see here, they are all Sacramento-based, and they are some of our clients. As I mentioned, we work, one of the main areas is creating clean transportation options for underserved communities, because as you know, transportation is one of the main barriers for economic development. So just for your information, we are managing the first community-based mobility hub in Sacramento in the El Paso Heights neighborhood, in one of the most underserved communities. The project is under construction, And actually, we use GIS for public engagement for that project as well. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned, we want to use, we are going to present two strategies for using GIS for our communities. The first one is how we use map-based surveys for public engagement, which for the mobility hub that I just mentioned and some other projects, we use the same strategy. The way that it worked was that we realized that if we go to communities and tell them, for example, where their essential destinations are or what are their transportation barriers, probably they may not be able to show it on the map or tell us exactly where the problems are. But if we create the map, that would be very informative and that can help them to advocate for their needs, because there are a lot of funding available for communities through cap and trade in California for transportation equity purposes. But usually those fundings require the applicants, nonprofits or communities to be able to prove that the need exists and the solution that they have in mind would work for that need. And as everyone knows, data and especially map-based information would be very helpful for that. To be able to do this, and also we knew that some of those community members, they do not speak English, or there are other cultural barriers for engagement. It's not just speaking English, even though they may speak English, they may not feel comfortable to provide input in this kind of services that we wanted to provide to them. It was even hard for them sometimes to understand the goal of the project or funding. So to be able to overcome those barriers, we created a map-based survey, which Vosawale will show you. And we trained local high school students. Some of them during COVID, we knew that everyone has access to Chromebooks, so equity aspect was there. So we asked them to have a Zoom meeting with us, and we showed them that how they can draw destinations and origin of the trips on the map, or where their parents or friends that they know need to go, but they have transportation problems, or where they go to school if they use public transportation or other ways of getting there. Map it for us, and then that's how, of course, they speak the same language as their parents, so they did that at home with their own family members. This way we were able to overcome that barrier. Also, we paid these students for the time that, even the training time, and also when they completed the surveys. For each survey, they received $10. So this way, we were able to, instead of hiring translators or using other strategies to get to people, we were able to use the available resources, which are those students in the community. And they really appreciated what they learned about mapping and also helping their own community. And initially, when we did this strategy before COVID, we were able to reach out to 12 languages in the Sacramento region. You may not think that there are 12 cultures here, but in the small area, we asked them to tell us which languages they use to communicate with their friends and family. And as I said, there were 12 languages, and each student was able to complete about like 10 surveys. So with having like 70 students that we trained for a project, we were able to reach out to 700 community members in a very short period of time. So, Vosawale, if you can please talk about the GIS mapping for this project, I appreciate that.
So as you guys will probably see in the next slides, one GIS thing that was different about this method, and you'll see in the examples, is that if I switch the slide, for this one here, the map-based survey that we used was created from scratch, whereas the next one is an ArcGIS based map-based survey. So I'm going to click on the link and show you guys what this looks like. And maybe Angelina can share a little bit about what this project is about and what this map is showing.
So the project was about finding, we were applying for funding through CARB, which is a state agency. And we wanted to show, doing the need assessment to show where are the destinations that people need rides for and what kind of car share or ride share program would be a good solution for this project. So we asked people, we created this survey on the left some questions, but also the last question is about please draw the destination on this map. I don't know, Vosawale, if we have the result of this. This is just a survey that we have there, but as you see, like Vosawale is trying to do that, they would say like, I live here and I need to go there. And those, the lines that people drew, we overlaid them. So this is not the result of the survey, this is the survey itself. And the reason that you see some dots around the map is that we were showing the EV charging stations on the map as well, because we wanted to see these vehicles that we are going to use are electric cars. So if it is a car share program, people needed to be able to charge their vehicles. That's why it was important to know where the EV chargers located, the public ones in the city. But the area that you see the boundaries are for the boundary of the service area, the community, which based on Kalimvar screen, which you may be familiar with, which is a actual GIS map to show disadvantaged communities. So based on the definition of California, California has a definition for disadvantaged communities, and they have, maybe we can show Kalimvar screen for, share that with everyone. Yeah, as you see the red color, the darker the color is, the more disadvantaged that neighborhood or community is, and they are census tracts, based on census tracts. But so anyway, the neighborhood was in a disadvantaged community, otherwise it wouldn't be even qualified for this project. But then, as we mentioned, we asked people to draw, we taught students how to respond to these questions, ask questions in any language, but then respond in English, of course. And then at the end, draw the destinations on the map. And we overlaid those to see where are the areas that there is a gap for transportation, and we can provide customized rideshare program for people. Vosawale, if you want to add anything to this, or we can move on to the next. Yep. Yeah.
I suppose what I would add is, if you were looking at the map again, I'll share it, is that, like I said earlier, this was created by a GIS developer who created it from scratch. So the layout and stuff was done from scratch. And what you'll see with the next project is we eventually moved to using ArcGIS to do our map-based surveys. So I'll change the slide for you guys to see and open up the next project. So this is the next project. Angelina, would you like to give some background before I open up the page?
Yes. So Bohemian Park is located in Sacramento, East Sacramento, and it is part of Fulton El Camino Park District. And there are a lot of social housing around Bohemian Park. And that's why usually refugee people use this park a lot. But recently, after the crisis in Afghanistan, there are a lot of Afghan refugees who use Bohemian Park. So we decided to actually not be smart, provided funding to do need assessment for transportation need assessment for Bohemian Park with the focus on Afghan refugees. So we wanted to know what are their needs, that they just arrived, they don't know where the service is located, they don't have driver's license to be able to drive, they don't even probably have money to buy a vehicle, to afford one, but even if they do, it takes them a while to be able to get a driver's license, and even sometimes they don't have their documentation in place for the first 6 months or 1 year. After having all those things, social security number and other things, then they can go and get their driver's license. So during that time, again, even if they can afford to buy a vehicle, they needed to go to destinations, and a lot of them live around Bohemian Park and come to the park for almost every day. If you go there, you will see them in the afternoon using the park as their backyard, because they live in a small apartment buildings and crowded places. So this is their, as I said, their backyard. So it's kind of really interesting. If you go there, it's kind of like you went to another country. So we thought that it's a good place to do the need assessment here and maybe provide some transportation program in this park, like have some infrastructure, EV chargers, and also maybe a shuttle, which that is another interesting GIS application, because we want to know where people need to go, and based on that, optimize the routes for those shuttles or vans or maybe passenger vehicles. For example, based on knowing that where they live, which we use the same strategy to ask them to map where they are and where they need to go and where their jobs are. So our focus was on jobs, on other services as well, but specifically on jobs, because when they get here, they need to work, and that's the hardest thing for them, to find a job. But we are working with CMC, California Mobility Center, you may be familiar with, and other organizations that have workforce as part of their programs. So we combine these two programs, workforce program and transportation, to see where are the locations for job training and job opportunities and where people live, to be able to optimize the routes, because we don't want to act like Uber, go and pick up someone and drop them off at their destination. The reason is that it wouldn't be affordable and sustainable. We have to manage those projects with grant funding or with whatever we charge people. And since they are low income, we cannot charge them like $20 like Uber to take them to their job, for example, or job training. So we had to make sure that those rides are ride share, so we can have more than one person in the car. But actually, we did the math that the only way that we can make the program sustainable is that we have at least 4 people who share most of, like 80% or 90% of the route. So knowing that, and knowing the fact that we need to know where they work, where are those job opportunities, and also where are charging stations, another barrier. We thought that the best way to address this problem is using GIS mapping, not only for engaging communities, but also to add other layers, as I said, like charging stations and job locations to be able to optimize the routes. This project is in the process of making. We don't have the final result, but Vosawale can explain it more.
So as you will see, we created this map-based survey with ArcGIS Hub, and we found that there was a lot more flexibility by creating it this way. If I scroll down, you'll notice we inserted a web map of our study area, just so that the young people that were administering the surveys would be able to familiarize themselves with the neighborhood, and also so that we'd be able to see where the different points or the survey results are being plotted. So if I scroll down, you can kind of see the results are populating, but you can't click to find out more details about those different points. So we hid them. If I scroll down further, then we get to the survey. So to be able to capture multiple different locations, like Angelina mentioned, where people live, where people go to work, school, and how they get there, we actually had to create different surveys using survey 1, 2, 3, and then insert them onto this ArcGIS Hub site page. So our survey, when we designed it, had 8 sections. So and each section has a different theme, and we get a different location from each section, a different GIS point. So if I'm scrolling down section 1, you can kind of see where the map-based portion of the survey is. People, they just sort of pinpoint where the neighborhood is. We didn't ask them for specific addresses, just a general location. And then they give us more information about how long they've lived there. The same goes for section 2. There's a map included. And then they tell us where they go to school and how do they get to school. Section 3, they tell us a little bit about where their children go to school, or if they have any, and how they get there, and so forth. And it just goes down the bottom. Another benefit, I suppose, of using ArcGIS Hub would be it's more responsive than our previous map-based survey. Angelina, is there anything else about this, or Cheryl?
I just wanted to add, yes, something about their information. As you know, people, especially people who are new here, we thought that they may not feel comfortable to give us their address. So we usually, when we train students, we tell them that when you are mapping where they live, just the area is okay. The good thing about mapping is that you don't have to write your address. You can just go around the area. Like if it is very close to Bohemian Park, for example, you can just click on Bohemian Park and say that's where we live. And that would give them confidence. Or if it's an apartment building, they are not telling us which unit, or they can just mark the street. And this gave them confidence that we are not looking to have their personal information. And it was good enough for us, because if we had a hub or a location for people to pick them up for their jobs, we most probably we wouldn't go to their door anyways. We would ask them to come to a common place in a nearby place, like the park, or maybe somewhere that more than one person in the area, and we can pick them up from same location. So to be able to be efficient, unless people have disability, we try not to go to their home address exactly. We go to the area. So this would help us. Imagine if we didn't have a map, there was no other way to ask people to provide the information about where they live without giving us their address.
I think one more benefit, if you're familiar with survey 1, 2, 3, you would already know that once people submit their results automatically. So that was another reason we moved to using ArcGIS over the other map-based server that we had. So this is again more benefits and some of the challenges. I've mentioned some benefits already. Angelina has as well. I'll move on to the challenges. Mainly designing the site was a challenge, mainly because we had no experience with doing it, and we sort of had to learn as we go and use a lot of tutorials online. Recruiting youth from diverse backgrounds was another challenge that Angelina would be more familiar with. Language barriers and other challenges that young people face. And then being able to schedule Zoom meetings with these young people to train them in using the map-based surveys was challenging at times. Some of them did not have stable or consistent internet access. Some didn't have, computers that functioned properly. And then teaching them how to use this map-based survey, which was something they had not used before, was also a challenge. But I think overall, from our experience afterwards, they seemed to enjoy it. And then another challenge at the end was analyzing the survey results, making sure that the input that they provided made sense. There's some instances where the survey responses didn't match up with the questions, or another challenge Angelina would be familiar with is translating the results. Because for this particular project, the Bohemian Park project, we were dealing with Afghan refugees. We had to find a way to translate all of the surveys to be able to deliver it to them.
Yes,
Angelina, is there anything I missed?
Yes, so I want to just add to this that the previous example that I talked about, that we use high school students. For that project, high school students have lived here, even if maybe their parents were immigrants or refugees or undocumented, but they have lived in the country for a long time, that they knew how to speak English. So that wasn't a barrier. They could just translate back into English. But for this one, we hired some students from the community, that the students themselves, they just arrived. So for them, speaking English wasn't that easy. So that's why, as Vosawale explained, we had to translate the questions, the survey questions in Farsi, just to make it easier for them to understand. So that was another barrier that we didn't have in the previous engagement. So still, I think it helped them to, they even helped us with, we keep explaining in English and in Farsi what those questions are, and they said this is the best way to ask that question from our community. So even they helped us with translation, but training them was a bit harder than people who have been here enough and have gone to school here. I want to pause here and see if anyone has comments, questions before we talk about the next strategy. I know that Veronica is here, and she's actually a student at UC Davis. I will let her to talk about that, but also she's a manager at Community Resource Project, which is a nonprofit. I know the name has project at the end and it's confusing, but Community Resource Project, or CRP, is a nonprofit in Sacramento that we use the same strategy, map-based survey, for them as our client. So I would like to see if Veronica has something to add to this, and also if anyone else has comments or feedback for the first strategy that we discussed. Thank you.
Hi, Angelina, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, turn on my camera. Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Veronica, Community Resource Project Program Manager. We do provide free weatherization, health services, but we're also trying to tap into the workforce development arena, and in general, just providing more training in the greenfield industry. So we're really happy to have partnered up with Aora Planning in terms of providing this web map application You'll see in some future slides, I'm sure, it was super beneficial for us, just understanding where they're coming from, the areas that they're planning to travel to. That's really important for our program as it's developing, as transit access and dependability has been an issue for some of our previous students. So yeah, super excited to see the rest of this program going to fruition. And I will be an incoming student in the geography program. So thank you again, Angelina, for the introduction and just the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Veronica. Again, I really like to hear from our audience. I see that Alex is asking a question, which I think was already, you should answer that question. So I think they want to see if we need help with design or from users' perspective, if we have any other issues. I wouldn't know about that because you are the one who is working on this map.
Well, from the user's perspective, I remember we had a few issues, Angelina, right, with the students. Sometimes some of the surveys were not public and we did not realize they were not public yet. So they would log in and then try to input their survey data for whoever they were interviewing, and there'd be an error. Or, so that's just one of the limitations we found, like trying to, because we had 8 different surveys rather than just managing one single survey, we have to go through, systematically through them all to make sure all the settings are the same, they're all public. Hopefully, maybe survey 1, 2, 3 and Esri will allow a feature for one survey to have multiple location inputs or multiple map-based questions. I think that would be a huge help. I hope that answered your question, Alex.
You got a thumbs up. I had a question for you as well. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you handled privacy concerns with people providing personal information, and what approaches did you take to make sure people felt comfortable sharing information with you like that?
Yes, that's a very good question. We actually gave number to even our students. They didn't have to, like, we had their information because they were kind of like working for us and with us. So, but for public, we said that we needed to know the responses belong to the same person. So we told our the students that you can choose a number for yourself. You don't even need to keep adding your name. We know, like, for example, 22 is Ali Reza, and that's good enough for us. But even in front of your applicant, in case that they don't know you or you don't want to show your name to them, you don't have to. But also when you're asking them for their information, for address, as I mentioned, because we had a map, they didn't have to give us their address. They just needed to show us which area they live. If we go back to the first example, you see that we divided the area to some smaller areas. So they could just say that I live in the area A or B or C or D, and there were so many houses there, we wouldn't know which one belongs to them. For their names, we said, you need to give us some kind of information to be able to contact you, but as long as the person who is interviewing knows you, which they were supposed to know them because they were family members and friends, and you mentioned that relationship is good enough because we know that we can contact our student and our student can contact you. For example, if someone was talking to their mom or friend, they can say, I am Ali Reza's friend, and that would be enough for us. And if Ali Reza is speaking to more than one person who is their friend, they should say friend number 1, friend number 2. That would be enough, as long as the person, in this case Ali Reza, knows who those people are. That would be enough for us. Each of those people, when they fill out the survey, the answers go to the same ID. So we knew that that's the same person is answering those questions. So we try to not ask we told them, if you want, you can provide your email address if you want to have follow-up questions or reach out to you, but you don't have to, because again, we have a student's information and we can reach out to you.
Just to add to that, if you recall from the map, the Bohemian Park map at least, we made sure that the locations that were mapped on the web map, they were just, their pop-up box were disabled. So really what people are seeing are just dots on a map rather than being able to click on the points and find out more about the respondents. I
Yes.
hope that, yeah, helps.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the responses.
And I also have a question. Usually how long your projects last and how do you keep your participants engaged in the process, like the whole process?
So it depends on the project, but I still have relationship with the students who be involved like 3 years ago. So the as I said, those students need to trust us, and that's the hardest part, to find them and they trust us to share their contact information with us. So to be able to do that, for example, we went to one high school, local high school. It wasn't easy, but we found a way to talk to the principal and explain the project and who we are. And then they send us to the classroom. So the teachers would say, yeah, you can trust these people. And if you want to help them, you will get paid. Also, it will count toward your community service hours. So after building that trust, then they are kind of like our friends. Even sometimes they call me for random things that have nothing to do with this project. But we kept the relationship, and we know where they live. So we have their information. Again, we don't need to know exact address, but because we had to pay them, sometimes I would drop off the check for them at their doorstep. Sometimes I needed their parents' signature because they were under 18 to be able to pay them. So for those reasons, usually I have their address as well, and I know where they live. So when we have another project, I call them and say, we have another project in the same area. Are you interested in participating? So that's how we keep them engaged. And as long as they are engaged, they can engage their community.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. If there is no more question or comment, we can talk about the second strategy. And so we realized, working with nonprofit agencies and also being part of a group which is called PEV Collaborative, which is PEV stands for Plug-in Electric Vehicle, which is a group that committee that Aora Planning is a member, and actually CRP and some other nonprofits and also government agencies are a member of this group. And usually the meetings were before COVID were at Air Quality Management District. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but Sacramento Air Quality Management District would run these events. Attending those meetings, we realized that there is funding and there is need, and we can help to connect these two things. Like we can go to a nonprofit. We could, as a consulting company, go to a nonprofit and tell them, you know, there's a funding for you, and we can help you to come up with a good proposal. But we realized that for them to see this, it would be very helpful if they can look at a map, GIS map, and see if they are eligible for that funding, and also to be able to showcase where their projects are. And so this tool, this GIS map tool could help them, empower them to be able to apply for those fundings. And some organizations like CRP has someone like Veronica that can make those maps for them, but a lot of them don't. So going to this PEV collaborative, realizing that how some nonprofit agencies don't have the resources, so they cannot voice their needs because they cannot talk to the government agencies with data, and they don't have money to hire someone with GIS capabilities, and also even buying the software and all those things. We thought, okay, how we can help them to be able to showcase their needs. So that's where we came up with this idea, which is this product that we are gonna talk about is Aora Planning's product, and it's not out there yet. We share that with our committee, with PEV collaborative committee, which has a subgroup, which is called DAC, Communities, Disadvantaged Communities. With that subcommittee, we share this tool, and they are going to use it for applying for funding. But it's not completely done. When we show it to you, you will know why. The tool is basically has so many layers of environmental justice and also we are gonna give the opportunity to people to create their own map using this map. So I will let Vosawale explain it way better than me. But the goal was, without having GIS software and without having the skill set, how can we give them a tool to be able to create their own maps and apply for those fundings? So, Vosawale, if you can please take it from here.
Okay, so I'm gonna just quickly go over this project, which is Sacramento Public Library Assessment, before moving on to the Seed Hub, which is the name of the project.
Yeah. Vosawale, could you please move on to the Seed Hub first? Sorry, now that we
Okay, we'll do Seed.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it up and share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see. It's still loading, so it might take a little time. But the Seed Hub is basically a web application or web app that we created that has multiple different layers of data relevant to these communities that we work in, but in one space. So rather than people having to go to different sites, so for example, the CalEnviroScreen site, other sites like the EPA's EJ map, we've just put everything in one place to make things a little easier. This is the splash screen that comes up. Which, as you'll see at the top, we're still developing it, so this is still the first version of it. These are the layers that we've added, and we've tried to group them. At the same time, we're also trying to experiment with different layouts for these web apps. As some of you may know, or if you're familiar with these ISRI or ArcGIS web apps, there's multiple different layout options that are available. This is the first one we've experimented with. I think other iterations will try to try out different layouts. And these are the different layers that we have. As you can see, there are so many. We're hoping with other layouts, we can present them in a manner that's a bit more easier to digest, especially for these communities that we work in who may not have any experience at all with these sort of maps. We've included a query tool on the side here. So CalEnviroScreen is something we refer to often, so I'll do a sample. Sometimes people ask funders when they're trying to provide funding for different projects, they have specific CalEnviroScreen scores that they response. So we included that as a query. So if you saw, I entered the, I asked for census tracts with coronavirus screen scores between 75 and 90, and that's what appeared. We're hoping that this will help those communities in determining whether they're eligible for different funding opportunities. We've included other features that you would probably have already seen in web applications. So ability to add data, to create bookmarks, ask for directions, print the map, and also, you know, the legend, measurement tools, and drawing tools and other tools. Angelina, is there something else about the web map
Yeah, so
you'd like to add?
yes, I just wanted to add that the layers that we have here, they come from a lot of funding applications that we went through. So we knew like what are the ones that especially related to transportation that they are asking for. And also the way that Vosawale linked them, as you know, is getting updated as soon as the map changes. Our map is updated as well. And also the way to use this map is something that we are working on that too, to create a video, to provide that video that when people watch that video, they know how they can choose a few criteria to be able to identify the location that meets all those eligibility criteria. For example, as was all explained, a lot of times they say that your community should be disadvantaged, which means it should have the percentile of 75 or higher. So as you saw, was already that, but maybe they have more things. Like for example, it should have transportation needs, like transportation accessibility number should be lower than this, or it should be, and maybe there are criteria that is not there, but we know that our applicants may need that. For example, to have equity, we have a layer for race to see that where are areas that are mainly Black, or Black people have majority, or minority majority neighborhoods, or these layers, if you overlay them, then you have the answer to your question that if your neighborhood is qualified for this funding, or if you can have a better argument for getting funding, because you see that it not only it is disadvantaged, not only it needs transportation, but also from the aspect of equity, even though they may not have that as an eligibility criteria, but you know that saying that this neighborhood is mainly Black would help you to get funding. So we thought about those layers as well. So a lot of layers came from going through those applications, but also some layers just going to environmental justice committees and talking to people and what their needs are and how they want to present their needs. We added some of those layers. Someone asked if this is available. Unfortunately, it's not public yet, and we are working on it, but it will be public hopefully by the end of the year, because not only those layers, as I said, we want to make sure that we provide some kind of training for people to know how to write their own query and get the response from the map.
Just to add, I think another thing that makes this seed hub quite useful is the data is being pulled directly from the sources. So we try to use just service layers, and we just added them as links. They're being directly pulled. So we really didn't do much editing to the data. All of this data is stored elsewhere as well. So we saved on our storage, our GIS storage.
So this is the second strategy. So first one was to use GIS for survey and gathering information, but this one is mainly for giving giving a tool to communities that do not have access to these kind of resources. We believe that technology can benefit low-income, underserved, disadvantaged communities way more than others, but unfortunately, usually they are the last ones that we consider for using the technology. So our goal is to compensate for that. And here we see benefits and challenges for using GIS data, maybe as a tool for community advocacy. Maybe Vosawale, you can go through that. And also I really like to hear from you as well. If you have comments, if you have ideas of how to make this map better, we would love to hear that.
So many of these benefits you would have already heard us mention earlier. And if you're familiar with web apps, ArcGIS web apps, then you would know how easy it is to use. I'll move on to the challenges then. So finding all those different layers of data and was a challenge in itself, trying to make sure that we are capturing important information that these communities could use, and making sure that it's shown in a way that, again, they can easily use and understand. Symbology is key to that. Another challenge was, I guess, making the web apps, the layout in particular, user-friendly. As you saw in the screen earlier, all the layers are grouped on the right-hand side, which we can understand is a little confusing. So that's why we're experimenting with other layouts to make it more user-friendly. And you'll see that in other iterations of the Seed Hub. Creating formulas for queries was another challenge. As you notice, we just had 3 queries there. And for me personally, not being as proficient in SQL or in any of the other languages, it was a lot of trial and error and Googling on my part to try and formulate those queries. Another challenge is, as Angelina mentioned, making sure that we have training materials for people, especially community members from these underserved communities, for them to be able to use the Seed Hub. So that's where videos come in, which she also mentioned. We believe videos would probably be more useful and helpful to them versus a guide, a written guide. Angelina, is there anything else that I missed that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I see a question about how we engage the community with this. First, I want to remind you that this is not a project that we are doing for any specific client. Unlike the other projects that we showed you, this is just Aora Planning's product that we are working on. And the way that we came up with this idea came from watching communities and nonprofit agencies, what are their challenges for applying for funding, because they usually hire us to help them. And we realized that how this tool can help them at the earliest stages, just to know if they are qualified, or to understand that they can create like projects for themselves and showcase that. So the whole thing came from listening to communities during years of my work and see that how there's a gap in technology for them. But as I said, it is just an experiment, and we are not done with this, and we will hopefully by the end of the year we will have the product in our website. And there is another question, I think. Is there another question?
I think the other question is from Michelle. Are there any other data layers you'd like to add to the interface that you haven't added yet? There are lots of data layers. I know we're waiting on the US Census, more US Census data, 2020 Census data to come out. We've also come across other other web portals, like there's a Healthy Places Index for California. There's also the EPA EJ screening tool map, if you guys are familiar with that. So we're working on bringing in those layers as well. And if you guys have any other layers that you think might be useful, please feel free to share them with us. We do not have redlining layers on this map, but we think it would be very useful. If anyone has any resources they could share for that layer, we'd happily add it to the map.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay, so I know Vosawale we skipped libraries project, but I think it's fine. It is almost 1 hour that we are talking. I don't know if you want, we can go through Q&A session. If you, or there is another initiative that we are working on. And again, similar to this seed hub, it is something that we thought it would be a useful tool for, not for communities, specifically for us to, as consultants, to engage community members. We can talk about that. I don't know, time-wise, Mina, how we want to proceed from here.
So we have time till like close to 12. So if anyone has any question, we can leave it for Q&A. So, and if like your other project is like a very, you can frame it in like 15 to 20 minutes. I think that's fine too. So let's leave some minutes for Q&A if anyone has any questions.
I was kind of curious what impacts you've seen from the projects that you've been doing in the community. Like, do you have any stories of how this has impacted people or made a positive difference? Like, how do you know you're making an impact? Because I imagine you are, but it would be nice to know like how you see that impact in your jobs.
Yes, thank you. So I guess the question is how we measure success, or how we know that these tools are helpful. There are two sides for this. One is when we engage community members to facilitate these map-based surveys, which are mainly high school students. Sometimes they may be college students, or but mainly most of them are high school, some of them even middle school students. That is something that I am I'm really proud of, because I see how they, after finishing this, which may be a small project, like maybe it takes only 2-3 days for them to complete those surveys, but some of them come back to us and tell us that how this is the first time in their lives that they have done something that others appreciated, because some of those kids are in these schools that whenever I go to those schools, I feel like it's another world. And my son is in high school as well, but I don't see any similarities between the level of education and a lot of problems that those schools face, and how a lot of days they don't have teachers, or their families cannot even give them right to school, so they miss a school, or drama that happens in their lives. And so as you can imagine, is a lot of these students, they do not have high grades or hope for future, but when they involve in this process and they come back to us and they say that they feel like they were appreciated, they were able to help their own communities, they learned something they like to do, maybe this is something that they consider for their future, to do mapping or doing survey and community engagement, that is really rewarding. The other side, which is from community side, we were able to win a lot of funding for our clients, which I think is a great sign of success and how these tools work. For example, we use those map-based tools for only two organizations in Sacramento for CMO funding, and both of them received the funding for need assessment, which was a competition in the whole state. And from Sacramento, only two organizations applied, and both of them applied through us, and both of them received funding. And also we brought some funding for the mobility hub that I just explained to you, and this engagement with public and showing the result of that helped to bring funding from SMOD and others for the project. So I guess that's how we see the success of these tools.
Yeah, I also like that there is like a conversation in the chat. So when people are commenting on your tool. Yeah, so any other questions, recommendations?
Thank you so much for all those comments. Thank you. And you have our contact information. So especially students, if they want to learn more about that, or if they have ideas at how we can improve our tools, we would like to talk to them. So feel free to email me, or you can find our phone number in the website as well, in our website. So I guess last 5 minutes, I would like to just mention a strategy that we are working on, but it's not going to be more than 5 minutes because it is, we are developing that, and Mina, I think you may know a little bit about that, is that how we can use GIS mapping and combine it with virtual reality to be able to engage community members. So we have some tools for engaging community members using virtual reality apps and using the headset. If you go to our website, aoraplanning.com, you can see an example of that. So we use Oculus Quest headsets, and we created environments in virtual reality, for example, environments to show what car share and ride share programs are. But our next step is how we can bring GIS mapping to these virtual environments. For example, I will give you just one example, but again, I really like to hear from you. If you have ideas, if you want to contact me later, we would love to hear that. As I said, I would love this to be a two-way communication, and we would love to learn from you as well. Is that we are, for example, there was this project for redistricting. The city of Sacramento had that, and we applied for funding to do that project. We were not successful, but for that project, the goal was, redistricting, council redistricting happened in Sacramento, and I think it is finalized recently, which didn't make a lot of people happy. But anyways, they had, city had public engagement, a lot of public engagements, but I don't think a lot of people knew what it means or how to participate, and what kind of difference it makes if their district lines change to a new lines and how it affects their lives. So we thought, what if we create a virtual reality environment and have a map of Sacramento and the current districts. And then when you are in VR environment, you can see the whole city and you can see the district lines. And then what if you could go there and change the lines, from one, let's say you live in a specific neighborhood, you choose that, and you see the map there and go change the line in virtual reality environment to include to move your neighborhood from district 6 to district 7, and then see how things change for you, like the population of your district, the council member, the school district, like how it affects your life. We thought that that's the best way to educate them about this process and also engage them in the process. Because unless people ask for example, keeping the lines where they are, or not exclude some of those disadvantaged communities from districts that have more services and opportunities, unless they didn't ask for that, there was no one to advocate for them. So we thought that this can be a very good advocacy tool for them. But again, we didn't win that project, and we didn't have the tool. We were thinking that if we win, then we have funding to work on that and make that happen. But anyways, if you have ideas about how to combine these two, and Vosawale, maybe you can explain more. You have done some research, and looks like that Esri actually is trying to combine virtual reality and mapping. Again, I'm sure that their goal is not to empower community members. It's a tool for everyone to use, but we want to customize it for this kind of use that I explained. Yeah, so if you have ideas and you can help us, we would really appreciate that.
Yeah, last year, as Angelina mentioned, last year we came across VR and GIS intersecting at the Esri user conference. And we're hoping more gets done in that space so that we can somehow take these, combine these two things that we're already working in, VR and GIS, and use it in the communities. Already so far, we've seen such a great response to VR-based engagements, as well as map-based engagements. So combining the two would be an exciting thing to see happen.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions, recommendations, or feedbacks?
I think one thing to mention is that Data Lab actually has a virtual reality expert who used to run caves in Earth and Planetary Sciences, but now he's moved into Data Lab, and he's been working for quite a while in the intersection of GIS and virtual reality. So he might be someone to pick his brain and see what is out there. I think there are a lot of tools that are out there that are not necessarily Esri based, but have been in production for a long time with other systems. So it might be, if you're curious, I think it would be a really interesting thing to combine virtual reality for this public community engagement space. In Data Lab, we mostly use it for right now for geology data and other like sort of more natural resources based kind of situations. And also we're kind of delving more into the medical space, like 3D imaging of medical imaging type data. But I think it's a really interesting way to use that technology to apply that to communities and community engagement. So you might want to reach out to Oliver Kralos. You can find him on our website.
Thank you, that's awesome. And if there is any opportunity that we can even maybe work with UC Davis, there are some fundings out there for this kind of innovative ideas. We would welcome that too. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, so Michelle, I think we can just like finish this workshop, this session, and Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Angelina and Vosawale, for your presentation. It was great meeting you, and it was great having your presentation. And thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again to our speakers. This was, like I said, when we were chatting earlier, this is a treat. We don't often get talks in the social science space at MapTime. So I really appreciate this. It's really exciting to see your work and to think about these kinds of things.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.